You're welcome to today's class. In our previous class, we discussed what planning is all about. We explained the planning, forecasting, educational planning, administrative planning, as well as instructional planning. Now, let us look into it. In our last class, I explained that planning takes place in every organization. Everyone needs to plan. Every individual, every group of people needs to be involved in activity of planning so as to set objectives that will be realized. Now, I also explained that planning has to do with thinking about and organizing the activities that are required to achieve a desired goal. In every phase of planning, there is always a desired goal to be achieved. There is always an objective to be met. While educational planning is the process of setting out in advance strategies, policies, procedures, programs, and standards through which an educational objectives can be achieved. All these are what educational planning means, planning and educational planning. In today's class, we'll be looking at factors guiding the operations of educational planning. Factors guiding the operations of educational planning. We've looked at the concept of educational planning and and other planning concepts in our last class. We've talked about administrative planning, academic or curricular planning, all forms of planning. We've explained it in our last class. We've also talked about the evolution of educational planning in Nigeria, where we explained the Ashby rules, as Ashby law. We've looked into the Ashby Commission, the reports, and all that. Now, today we'll be talking on factors guiding the operations of educational planning. We know that educational planning has to do with planning ahead in order to achieve a set goal, in order to achieve some set goals. For the factors guiding the operations of educational planning, in every phase of planning, there is always a factor guiding the operations of planning. You can't just plan without having some factors to follow, reasons why you want to plan in order to achieve a set goals. So we'll look at the factors that influence educational planning. Let's look at some major terms. We have the efficiency, which is the comparison of what is actually produced or performed with what can be achieved with the same consumption of resources, money, time, and labor. Manpower, which is the total supply of personnel available or engaged for a specific job or task. All these are terminologies, factors affecting educational planning in general. We have also the growth, which is the increase in the numbers of individuals in a population, can foster a plan, can bring about planning in order to expand, to be able to accommodate the level of expansion. And also the present situation of Nigeria calls for a planning, another form of planning entirely in order to cope with the pandemic and everything that is going on within the country. Now, let's look at the objectives of educational planning. The objectives of educational planning. The first one is to enhancement internal and external efficiency in education, in the educational system. It's there to enhance internal and external efficiency in the educational system of the country. And the other one is enhancement of educational growth and development. There's always a difference between growth and development. Growth is increase in quantity, and development is overall improvement in all spheres. Educational planning targets at ensuring that primary school, secondary school, and also higher school or higher education increase in quantity and also experience overall increase in improvement. So as much as there will be increase in population from time to time, educational provision should also increase to measure up with the increase in population. Now, enhancement internal and external efficiency in the educational system. One of the objectives is to enhance the educational growth and development. As the population is increasing, as individuals and people are coming up to into the educational system, the educational system should enhance growth and also development. Now, it should enhance expansion, putting in mind the population, the growth in the population from time to time. And it also needs to look at increment in the quality of the education, not just increase in the quantity, the quality of education, the type of educational provision that is supposed to measure up with the increase in the population. Efficiency is the relationship between the input and output such that the input will yield greater output. Now, efficiency can be internal, it can also be external. Internal efficiency, sorry, internal efficacy within the educational system is the relationship that exists between the inputs that yield greater output in the educational system, like student time, food intake, teachers' teaching time, time used by school for administrative duties or student issues, sleeping time, or period. Now, efficiency can be internal, it can also be external, which looks at the relationship between the input and the output, such that the input will yield a greater output, like creating of student time, creating of food intake, teacher teaching time, creating of time used by school for administrative duties on student issues, sleeping time. All these inputs are supposed to create an a greater output. Now, why the output is the performance of the students in given examination, especially those organized within the school setting and also by public examining examination bodies. By the time the student performs performance in these examinations are outshining or outstanding, this is a result of the various inputs that were put together. Now, it can then be concluded that in the internally organized educational system, a greater uh, sorry, with this respect to the external efficiency, it is between the output from the educate of or from the educational or education sector, the economy. From various sectors of the educational system should be able to meet up with the manpower requirements if the various sectors of Nigeria economic. And if such happens, it can be concluded that there is an of the educational system. That is, if the students produce, the graduates produce, are well and needed in a specific manpower, it fills the gap of the needed manpower. The external concluded that there is an external efficiency of the educational system. However, if the produced manpower cannot meet up with the requirements of the various sectors, then there's external inefficiency in the educational system of the country. Now let's look at the another objectives of educational planning. It ensures that there is production of needed skills, manpower required for all other sectors of the economy. Now, in planning of education, there are different phases of planning. So, the needed skills required by different sectors of the economy should be put in mind in the creation of curriculum to enhance efficiency in manpower. Now, as much as the educational sector is primarily made up of primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions, these levels are primarily saddled with the responsibilities of production of manpower. Manpower is needed in various areas as art science, social science, technology, agri, etc. So each and every one on Earth planet is endowed to be trained in the various areas so that each person will become a useful citizen in the discovery areas of interest. Each school level carries out the function of ensuring that individuals discovered his or her areas of interest and invariable. The school levels help such individuals to become experts in the various areas. So each one or everyone went through the school levels and also went through the third level of education, therefore becomes an educated manpower. Such manpower are needed, employed in various sectors of an economy, and thereafter they contribute their own quota to the upliftment if such economic in diverse ways. In such economic in diverse ways. Let's look at the enhancement of social, economic, and political growth and development. The difference between growth and development has been explained under the first objectives. In line with the explanation, another objectives of educational planning is there to ensure and enhance socio-economic and political growth and development. These activities embarked on by individuals within a community is made up of social, economic, and political activities. So these activities are expected to expand from level to level through dependent in the population composition of a given area. Socially, individuals are expected to socialize, exchange pleasantries, teach proper conduct from transfer such from one generation to the other to another generation. So economic activities teaches the processes of exchange of goods, services with money, and also the process of banking, transport, insurance, etc. So political activity is therefore the process of transiting from one government to the other. Each of these social, economic, political activities and are expected to move from one level to the other, and not only in number but noticeable overall improvement. The socio-economic and political enhancement, growth, and development is one of the objectives of educational planning, which talks about how this uh, how socialize how this social, economic, and political achievements can be transmitted from one government to the other, as in the activities are expected to move from the level to the other level, and not only in numbers alone. So let's look at the to ensure the rational decisions are made. This is one of the decisions objectives of educational planning. It also ensures that rational decisions are made when it yields results that are progressive and does not give rooms for wastage. In educational system, decisions are rational, which includes establishment of schools in areas that are densely populated, feeding of students in schools. All these are rational decisions. The establishment of schools in areas that are densely populated. So you could expect a few number of population in students in such schools. Feeding of students in schools, they are rational decision. Now, educational planning also targets at making sure that various decisions in the educational system are those that can push forward the educational system from one stationary print to a progressive one. Now, having schools in areas that are densely populated will help greatly. It will help the population, the society, the community within around surrounding that schools. So you can see as a result of this, pupils, students will be educated, and in the future they will contribute to the general growth of the economic, the general development of the society and also the economy, because they will serve in one way or the other as manpower to different sectors. So educational planning also makes sure that various decisions in the educational system that can push forward the educational system. All these decisions are there to move the educational system to a progressive point. To this end, the educational planners have greater responsibility at making sure that rational and right decisions are taken at various points for the good of everyone. So let's look at the realization of educational policy. Various policies are set are also aimed at improving the educational system. So among the policy in the policy of 40 students to a teacher in a primary or secondary school. So this type of policy is to ensure that a teacher provides a one-to-one relationship between the teacher and a student. So students will enjoy teachers' personal contact during schooling period. This is one of the educational policy. Realization of educational policy is also part of the objectives of educational planning. That in each classroom at the primary and secondary level, 40 students is to be assigned to a teacher. A maximum of 40 students should be assigned to a teacher. The essence of this is that the teacher will be able to have one-on-one relationship with the students, and students will therefore enjoy their teachers' personal contact during schooling period. Let's come to the characteristics of educational planning. The characteristics of educational planning. The characteristics of educational planning. We've discussed um, the objectives. Let's look at the characteristics. The first one is that the educational planning has to be defined and stated the objectives must be clearly defined and stated. Now, for any be an objective to be achieved, if it is worthy of note, to ensure that objectives are clearly defined and properly stated. Clearly defined objectives will be measurable, achievable, and realizable. For educational planning to really achieve what is said to achieve, one good features or characteristic is to have a clearly defined and stated objectives. I explained that planning is everyone's business because everybody needs to plan. Every organization needs to plan. But in this phase of planning, in this level of planning, there should be a defined and a clearly stated objectives must be put in place. And the another characteristic is the flexibility. Now that the planning educational planning should allow flexible. The plan should be flexible enough to allow development. Now, development has to do with the overall changes on all aspects of life. Like what we have now, some schools have put in place some levels of development in terms of having online teachings, online classes for both primary and secondary students, because they look beyond the pandemic. That if this pandemic progresses, definitely the students will lag behind. The students will be affected. So they therefore devise a means which they incorporated in their plan to help the students to access their various classes online, which is very good. So every educational plan should be flexible enough to allow development. So plan flexibility is essential because of different situations where one will find himself, and because of this situation or environment where such plan will be operational. So the plan should give rooms for exhibition of initiative, and these expenses, it ought to give rooms to opportunities, to capabilities, abilities, and various individuals. So that's the essence of the plan. We are on the characteristics of educational planning. Talk about realization of educational policies. Okay, we've talked about the flexibility. Let's look at the timely and reasonable. Timely and reasonable. Now, plan must be timely and reasonable. As much as we have various times available to us under the earth, so all plans that are put together should be able to meet the various times, the various need, the current need of the people. This makes sure that plan needs to be uh, and such plan to be time compliant. The plan must also be a reasonable one that will give rooms for rationality, for growth. Educational plan must have facts and figures. It must be measurable. So the plan must be based on facts and figures. It is essential that plan making must be guided by facts, figures, and available statistics instead of it being dependent on rule of thumb. Like plans that are based on rule of thumb will suffer some limitations because it will not be exact and not likely meet the need of the populace. So it is against this that it must be advocated that plan must be based on available facts, figures, and statistics to give room for opportunity to make projection about the future, and also to help in achieving the slated objectives. So let's look at clear language. Educational plan must be communicated in clear language, in an acceptable language. Must be the plan is made and to be effective on human being that lives within a given environment. So this individual speaks one language or the other, and it is a means of passing various information. So educational plan must therefore be communicated in clear and lucid language of importance. As the general acceptable language in Nigeria is education. Sorry, is English. So the educational plan must be written in English language. You understand? It must be written in English language. Um, to be able to, in a clear language that will be understandable by the community. So economically, the plan must be economical. Plans that are set to be implemented must not have a wasteful content, and so must be economical in all ways. As economists,
Please hold on. Your lecturer will join you soon. Please have network issue. Thank you.
Sorry for the break in transmission, in the connection. Um, Let me just. I've talked about the factor guiding the operations of educational plan.
More 2 minutes.
Yes, I know. I just want to preview it. Let them see and take this, yes, and screenshot. Okay, this is assignment. This is the assignment for the week. You can quickly screenshot it to be submitted to bimseli@yahoo.com. Now, please, you have to submit on or before 23rd of this month. You have 1 minute to screenshot it. My time is up. We'll be meeting in our next class by upper week. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Mr. Yami, done.